So one of the great things about MySQL is the ability to call a function on a particular column. So if we're trying to select select a different particular column, or say we have a select sequence and it's just not exactly what we want, there might be a function available to us in MySQL that we can use to maybe get there. So I'm going to kind of talk about what some of those things are and how easy it is to implement them. So let's start with some text functions. So let's say for the clients, for instance, concat is a particularly awesome function that allows us to smash two values together. So say instead of just getting the first name and last name separately, I wanted to get them together. I could say select first, I can say select concat, and I put the parentheses here, and I provide it with the first name and the last name, and I can actually concat as many things as I want here. So say I knew that everyone in my database was going to be a Mr. Of course, probably not the case, but hypothetically speaking, we can say maybe that they are. So I can concat as many values as I want, even if they aren't specifically database column, table column values. So if I want to select this from clients, and I go ahead and run that, you can see here that not everybody is actually a Mr. It looks like we could have actually used an additional space as well, so that we can account for the space between the Mr. But you can see that it was able to put all of those particular values together. So Mr. is in front. We had a space between the first name and the last name. Concat is really useful for things like this. But one of the things I want to point out really quick in this video is that see how the name of our column has gotten skewed to this awful looking thing right here. So whatever we're selecting actually becomes the name of our column. But we can change that just by adding a simple as to the end of that particular selection. So I can say that this is going to be the full name instead of that concat thing. If I rerun it, then it becomes full name. So you can do that really easily if you'd like, and we could still, I can actually have as for any particular column selection that I want. Say, for instead of email, I wanted it to be as E, or something stupid like that. We would then see it as E. So for any column that I select, I can add an as to, and it works out really nicely for things like this. Email, you might actually want to keep as what it is. So, okay, so that's concat. Concat WS is actually a little bit nicer. So we can provide something at the very beginning that will go between every additional value that we have. So notice how we had to put a space between each one of these, each one of the first and last name up here between Mr. and all of that. If we provide the very first parameter within this function as a space with concat WS, it will then put a space between that automatically. So we can add additional values, first name, last name, cool, and it'll add a space between each new item that we add to it, which is really convenient, especially for things that we need to be separated by a space or a comma. It works out really well. Okay, so some other text functions, length. If we want to find out the length, the number of characters for a particular item, we can. So we can say select length of the, let's say we want the length of the last name here. And we'll say as last length, or last len. And we'll say we got it from clients. Okay, we run that. So this is going to be the number of characters in the last name for each one of these rows. So not a whole lot of use immediately for that, but there may be some stuff that you want to use. Length actually gets used more often than you would think. So let's go ahead and see what lower does. So let's go ahead and lower the let's lower the first name as first lowercase. Okay, so, and if we were to instead select the first name without the function lower, you see that they are all capitalized. So lower will actually lowercase all of your values for you. So it works out kind of nice if you need, for some reason, for things to be all lowercase. So those are some neat text functions. Let's look at some cool date functions. Okay, so date functions need to be performed on date time columns. So each one of these functions is expecting a parameter that is a date time, and MySQL stores its time values in a few different formats, but we'll be using mostly date time. It makes it a lot more flexible. So within our clients, we can see that we have a join date time. So we can just go ahead and perform the hour function on our joined date time. And we'll save this as date hour and from clients. Okay, if we run that, it's going to give us that hour in a 24-hour format for each one of those joined date times. And let's just actually see what the change, or see the change that's been made. So we can select that in addition to the joined date time. So we can take a peek at what the actual change has been. So the date time has a date and a time associated with it. So it's actually just going to grab the hour out of each one of these, which is kind of nice for some purposes. So I'm just going to kind of copy this down so I have to retype the whole thing. And we're just going to see the difference in each case. So we wanted to get the day name. So the day of the week that it is, it'll go ahead and find out what the particular day of the week it is for that date time. If we wanted the month, we could then say, okay, what is that month? And that's going to give us, oops, these are all as date hour. Maybe we should change that to day name and month. Okay, that's better. So that's going to be the actual number of the month within the given year. We can actually, functions that don't require any parameters, we can actually select them directly. So if I were to say, okay, select now and run the now function, now it's going to give us a time or a date time for basically the time right now. So if I run this, let's just say as right now. If I run that and we take a look here, so right now I just ran that and the time is 23:24:10. If I run it again, it should change then to however many seconds have passed. So now is really useful, and you'll be using it for the created at and updated at. When we insert later, when we start using the created at and updated at more often, we'll actually be using the now to insert what the current time is. And if you can't find what the format is for any of the functions provided with MySQL, any of these other functions, you can provide your own format. And one of the cool things about providing your own format is you can put it in whatever format you like. So I don't memorize this stuff, believe it or not. So I like to use this as a reference. And so if you go to this site, W3 Schools has a really nice list of all the stuff. You can find this in multiple places. I like the way that they list things. So say I wanted to put the format of my particular date as the day of the week. So say I want it to be something like Wednesday, September 20th, and then the year. Let's find out how we can do that. So if we wanted to get the day of the week, so let's say weekday name, so %W. Let's take %W, and we'll say select on date first item is going to be the timestamp, the date time. So we'll use joined date time for this. And the second part, in quotations, is going to have the actual format. So anywhere it actually sees a formatted item. So all of these are the actual format it's looking for, but we can also put spaces and commas and all sorts of other things as long as the characters we're hoping to put in here don't match up with these, then it'll work out just fine. So we'll say that this is the day of the week. Then we said we want the month name. So let's get %n. Okay, and said then we need the day of the month. %e. Okay, so what was it? So day of the week, month date, and then the last thing is the year. Okay, and we want a comma here and the year. And let's go ahead and make sure that we're selecting from class. Let's run that. Okay, cool. So now we have an awesome looking format, and you can actually use any one of these that you'd like to put in whatever format you want. So it's really flexible if you want to use the date format. So I've provided some additional functions to this on the actual text below this video. So take a look at some of those functions. You may find that they may not be useful for you right now, but it'd be really good to practice them. So I suggest that you do a little bit of practice.